So it is sunrise on Easter Sunday. We're back home in the Midwest and got home very late. Naturally, the flight was delayed yesterday, and driving out to meet up with the family for Easter Sunday. And we're back in our Tesla after spending 3 weeks driving out to the West Coast and then driving all over the West Coast and the Southwest in our brand new 2021 F150 XLT Power Boost Hybrid. And it's funny driving, getting in a different car or a different vehicle after spending that much time in the F-150, because you do kind of get an appreciation for the things that truck can do. And the first and most important thing you realize is that electric vehicles are not yet ready for the mainstream. Okay, this Tesla is a great car in so many ways, but guess what? We got home, people have been using it, it wasn't charged, and so we had to mess around at 10 in the evening, find the local Tesla supercharger and go and charge it up for like 45 minutes. And then it was midnight, and so it was kind of like, the hell with it. Just go to bed and wait till the morning. And so now, after about 5 or 6 hours in the rack, it's up and at 'em, and again headed out to the farm where our in-laws live, and we're having Easter Sunday with them. And the family's already there. So that's the first and most glaring difference between that hybrid F-150 and a full electric vehicle. You never have to stop and charge the F-150, okay? It's a real pretty sunrise. Not sure how much of it you can see in the camera. But yeah, the fatal flaw of electric vehicles is that you have to stop and charge them at like the worst possible time. When we were driving out to the West Coast a couple weeks ago in the F-150, the hybrid F-150, every couple hours we would pass one of those Tesla chargers, and we'd be like, oh yeah, there's another place we stopped and pulled over for 45 minutes to charge the Tesla. And again, instead of stopping and pulling over and charging the F-150, we just kept on trucking. And so to us, the idea of an electric F-150 is kind of preposterous, because the Tesla, it is a great car. It's about the best electric car you're going to get for a while, either the Model S or the Model 3, because of the fact that it's so aerodynamic. This one has like a 0.23 drag coefficient, and it's got such a big battery. This one is it's 5 years old. It's got the 85 kilowatt hour battery. The newer ones have 100. And even so, and it's got this super fast charging network, and like some of the Tesla chargers can put like 250 kilowatts of power in terms of their the amount of charging speed they have. The more kilowatts you charge with, the faster it's going to charge. The faster it's going to accumulate energy in the battery. And so even with all those advantages, it's still a pain in the backside, because even if you're keeping your speed down, we're going under 80 here, which is really hard to do. You still have to stop and charge at the most inconvenient times. And an electric F-150 is not aerodynamic like a car. At least the ones we've been hearing about. I mean, unless they've changed it, You know, they don't have 100 kilowatt hour battery. Maybe they do. But they don't have a nationwide fast charging network. You know? Got a lot of fog, steam coming off the lakes and things like that. So that to us, in every way, sounds like a disaster. You know? And so for the time being, you know, you can tell Ford is trying to tiptoe and experiment and figure out its way into the future in terms of, you know, alternative energy and alternative fuels and all that kind of thing. But the idea of a full electric pickup truck, to us, unless they solve the aerodynamics and unless they solve the fast charging, you know, it just seems like a really bad idea. Now there's a Tesla pickup truck coming out. They call it the Cybertruck. And that thing, I guess, has better aerodynamics than an F-150. It's shaped like a doorstop. And maybe that can go... I guess they're claiming it can go like 500 miles on a charge. But guess what it can't do? It can't tow a trailer all day like an F-150 can. That has a real engine. And so if you do any amount of work with your truck, if you tow heavy loads, if you haul heavy loads, you know, it's not going to work. No electric pickup truck on the planet is going to get any size trailer down the road. You know, it's funny. The guys, there's a channel called TFL, the Fast Lane TFL Truck, and they actually got a Tesla Model X, the big SUV. There's a Model Y, which is the smaller SUV, and so they got a Model X and hitched up a very small camper trailer to it, and they couldn't get like 100 miles down the road. You know, you know, they were desperately like keeping their speed down to like 45 or 50, just so they could get from one charger to the next, one of the Tesla superchargers to the next. You know, it was an absolute disaster. And then you get to the charger, and you know, with the Tesla you got to back into the charger, and so then you got to unhitch that trailer from your Tesla every time you want to charge it. It's not like some kind of drive-through charger where you can just pull in and then pull right out forward. No, you got to back into it. And so who knows? Maybe when the Tesla pickup truck comes out and people start towing with it, maybe they'll start making more of their chargers to where you can pull forward into them. Who knows? But it's just a terrible answer right now, and it's not practical, and pickup truck owners are not going to take to it. That's our prediction. But the hybrid, you know, that's got a lot more promise, for the very simple reason that you never have to stop and pull over and charge it, because it makes its own energy for the battery from the engine. Now, the fatal flaw of the hybrid, as we discussed a couple times, is that it's got such a small hybrid battery, and so it can't do you that much good. You know, it's not going to save that much fuel because it can't actually accumulate energy. You know, it can't do any significant amount of regen with the electric motor to recapture vehicle momentum and put it into the battery, because the battery fills up, you know, very quickly. You know, we were coming down the Rockies. You know, you get through one of the passes, you get through Vail Pass, 11,000 feet, and then you come down a very long downward stretch. There's a thing called the Ike Gauntlet. We actually, you know, when you come out of the Eisenhower Tunnel, it's 11 miles and it's a very steep downward slope. It's like 7% downward slope. And, you know, the Tesla, we have taken this exact car through that stretch of highway, all the way through I-70 through Colorado. And it's great because the whole time you're going downhill in the mountains, it is recapturing that energy and then storing it in the battery. And then the next time you need it, it's available. to run the car, to power the car. And that's why the Tesla has decent range. You know, the ability to recapture energy. Now, the hybrid battery in the F-150, it's 1.5 kilowatts. This thing is 85, and the newer ones are 100. So the F-150's hybrid battery has like 98.5% less capacity than the modern Tesla Model S battery. And so, you know, we looked at it. It's tiny. It's like longer and skinnier than like a regular vehicle battery, but it's about the same overall size and weight. You know, it's maybe 100 pounds. I don't know. The battery in this Tesla is like 1,000 pounds. And so you think a battery that's only like 1.5% of the capacity of a Tesla's battery would would be smaller and lighter, but it's actually it actually doesn't scale down, you know, perfectly, I guess. So again, the battery in that hybrid F-150 is a big disappointment, and we know they had to preserve payload, but it just seems like they could have made it a little bit bigger, and they didn't. So you kind of have to live with it, and that's fine. You know, it's better than nothing. The other problem it creates is that, you know, in the Tesla you can run something called camper mode. You know, where you know people camp in these cars. They like I don't know, get to a campsite, and then you can run the air conditioning or the heat all night and be like camped out in the back and on like an air mattress in the hatch area. And you know, the Ford doesn't have anything like that. And when you're sitting there with the engine off and you're getting work done or whatever, the engine is constantly turning on and like cycling to keep the battery charged. It's noticeable. It is constantly coming on, and that's without even any heavy draw, because you know, you don't even have like, you know, major power tools or anything plugged into it. And if you did, yeah, the engine would be on for a majority of the time. So it just seems like if they were it would be a lot smarter to have a slightly bigger hybrid battery, even like 10 kilowatt hours, you know, 10 or 12. You know, add a couple 100 pounds, but like whatever, you put stronger springs in it, maybe put a stronger axle in it, raise the GVW. You know, it's 7,350 right now on the F-150 Hybrid, and maybe you could make it 7,700, like the old F-250 they used to have that was based on the F-150 in like 97, 98, when the 97 F-150 came out, and they made a stronger version. You know, same body, probably a little bit stronger frame, definitely a stronger rear axle and springs. And there's no reason they couldn't do that with the current F-150 to accommodate a heavier battery. And then that hybrid system would actually do you some good. And you could probably get not 24 EPA in the city, you might be able to get like 30 in the city, MPGs. And by the way, the current one does not actually get 24. We've gotten no better than like 21. So anyway, you know, that's when you look at it and you compare an actual electric vehicle like this Tesla with the F-150, that's kind of the main difference, you know. The F-150, you're never going to have to stop and charge, and so it's a lot more practical. But at the same time, if they just put a slightly bigger battery into it, it doesn't have to be 85 or 100 kilowatt hours like the Tesla. Even if it was like 10 or 15, it would just be 1,000% more useful. The other problem with a small battery is that it's constantly charging and discharging a lot more. When you got a smaller capacity, the electricity is cycling in and out of it a lot faster than if you have a bigger capacity. It charges and discharges a lot slower, if that makes any sense. So potentially you're going to wear that battery out much faster the smaller it is. And you got to think Ford thought about that. And we got some friends there. We'll talk to them and see what they have to say, because it's just a little peculiar. A couple other observations. They both have driver assist. In Tesla, it's called Autopilot, and you see it engaged right now. And it's engaged because that little section of road that's pictured there, it's blue. And you engage it by pulling on the cruise control thing twice. And then you disengage it either by stepping on the brakes or by getting out of the lane or by pushing the lever forward. And it makes that sound. So to engage it, again, you have to have the vehicle centered in the lane. So like right now, it's between lanes. You got to have it centered in the lane. Pull the little control stalk twice, and then the thing turns blue, and then Autopilot takes over, and then you can set it. And then you can set it for 75. You can raise it by 1 mile an hour at a time, or lower it by 1 at a time. Or if you push the stalk a little bit further, like that, it goes up and down by 5 miles an hour. And so we've talked about the differences. The Autopilot and the Tesla, this is the original version. It's called AP1 or Autopilot version 1. It works well. It keeps you in your lane. It helps long trips go a lot smoother. Cuts down on your workload. And so does the system in the Ford. This one's just a little bit better. We talked about it the other day. It can see, 2 or 3 cars ahead of it. And so when a car that's like 3 cars ahead of it is starting to slow down, the Tesla will make note of that and will react accordingly. So it doesn't get thrown off by like sudden changes in traffic up ahead. It's not constantly slamming on the brakes because it didn't anticipate that the traffic was slowing down. But they both work really well. And you can tell the Ford system in a lot of ways is modeled in the Tesla. If you go a couple minutes without really, applying any pressure to the steering wheel, the thing, the dashboard, a little warning is going to come up and it's going to say, apply slight pressure to steering wheel. Just to make sure you haven't fallen asleep, because people have been known to do that. There's been videos of people in their Teslas. You pull up next to one of them and and the driver's sleeping. And so I think they kind of got some bad press from that, and they are they don't want you to be driving this car while you're sleeping, because it's not safe. You do have to be watching the road. Stuff can happen, and it's not perfect. It's technology, and it's not infallible. But again, the Ford's got the same message that pops up on the screen. It says, keep hands on the steering wheel, and it's like orange at first, and then it turns red, and then it starts beeping at you. The Tesla doesn't beep at you; it just disengages, and then you got to pull over and put it in park. It's almost like you're getting punished, and then you can put it back in drive, get back on the road, and then start using Autopilot again. The screen on the Tesla, it's 17 inches. It's great. It's a portrait mode. It's got your audio controls. I mean, you control almost everything in the car from this 17-inch screen. It's great, and the map is very, very detailed. It's like one of the few factory navigation systems we actually would rather use compared to Google Maps. You know, a lot of people have been talking up the Ford factory navigation, so we'll have to do, you know, we'll have to dive into that in detail and see what we think. But the Tesla screen, again, it's big and it's very detailed, and it's got your route on there, and you know, supposedly the traffic information and I guess the navigation, some of it, it's based on Google Maps. Like, it gets its data from Google Maps, but obviously with a different, you know, look and feel. So this is a 17-inch screen. The Ford is a 12-inch screen, and the Ford is in landscape mode. And so it's, you know, similar, but not quite as useful. You know, this is a little bit more useful. It's just, you know, more responsive. You can kind of drag and drop it. You can, like, zoom in and out. That kind of thing. And your audio controls are on there, and your climate controls. Everything is on there. Almost. You know, for better or worse, the Ford does a great job of having a majority of the controls that you need to use while you're driving. There's a button or a switch or like a knob for it, and so you can use those controls without having to take your eyes off the road. And the Tesla, no, you gotta take your eyes off the road and, you know, mess around with the audio. And that's unfortunate, and we appreciate the fact that Ford has not gotten sucked into that whole movement. You know, they claim it's for better ergonomics, and you know, we can push a live update out, or not a live update, an over-the-air update, and improve the software as it goes. And that just seems like a cop-out. That just seems made up. I think in a lot of ways they're just trying to save money on the development of the vehicle by not having a design and go out and engineer and source all those materials and all those switches and buttons, and you know, it saves all that work in terms of supply chain and, you know, materials costs. And then you got to have people installing it and all that labor. And the touchscreen eliminates all of that. But it doesn't make the car safer. You know, in the new ones, in the Model 3 and the Model Y, supposedly you don't even have your interval wipers on a switch or on a stalk. So it's like pouring down rain, and you got to get on the screen and mess around and try to adjust the speed of the wipers on the screen while you're going 75 or 80 miles an hour down the highway. It just seems kind of ridiculous to us, and it doesn't seem like it's an improvement at all. Something else you notice is that the Tesla has a much it's not as smooth of a ride as the pickup truck. And well, maybe that seems obvious because, well, the Tesla is kind of meant to be kind of like a performance car. It's got steel springs. It's got very, very short wheel travel. It's got an exceptionally small amount of wheel travel. It's only got, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches of ground clearance. You can bottom this out on speed bumps easily, and then you hit the battery compartment on the speed bump when you go over too fast. And so you got to take the speed bumps nice and slow. And so because of that real short wheel travel, the springs are very, very stiff to keep you from bottoming out. In the F-150, it's got much, much more wheel travel, and especially in the back, you know, with the solid axle. You know, solid axles have a tremendous amount of travel. And that's why like off-roaders like them so much, because they can articulate better and stay in touch with the surface. You know, whatever your surface you're on, you know, mud and rocks and whatever. When you're on like those, when you're rock crawling and, you know, twisting the frame on big boulders. But no, the Tesla has very stiff springs, and you feel that, you know. It's not like punishing, it's not going to rattle your teeth, but nevertheless, you see the camera shaking, and that's part of the reason why. The other part is because Michigan has such terrible roads. You know, the Southwest, you know, everyone talks about California being bankrupt, but at least they take care of their roads. You know, at least the major highways. And they also don't have freezing weather for 4 or 5, 6 months out of the year. So the roads don't get, like, subjected to so much wear and tear. From all the, like the frost heaves, you know, moisture gets under the highway and then it freezes and that pushes up on it and cracks the cement. It's yeah, the roads are in terrible, terrible shape. And the fact that this car is riding so, you know, so rough the way it is, it's like the ultimate combination. It's like a 1-2 punch. And so you didn't see the camera shaking in the F-150. The level of noise, you know, the F-150 is a very, very quiet truck. And the Tesla is quiet as well. Obviously, you don't have an engine making noise. But, you know, the wind noise, it's not that bad. The tire noise, you don't have any until your tires start to wear out. The Tesla kind of eats up tires. You know, our last set, it lasted like 35,000 miles, 40,000 miles. And there's just a ton of like inner wear on like the rear tires because they got that negative camber. Because the car is so heavy, you know, they don't, you know, when it corners, they want the tires to be more or less vertical. And to do that, they got to have them with like a negative camber. So that it doesn't start out like vertical and then the car corners and it rolls and then you got no contact patch. We will see how the F-150 does in terms of tire life. You know, it's got all-terrain tires. They're tougher. It's like a stronger compound. So yeah, the dashboard on this thing, that's like the first thing that hits you when you get into it. There's like nothing to it. It's a couple of vents. You know, there's 4 vents on the dashboard. There's your touch screen. There's your digital display there, which they got rid of in the Model 3 and the Model Y, which we strongly disagree with. And then you got your steering wheel, and that's basically it. It's like extreme simplicity. And that's like a massive difference because the F-150, the dash on that thing is covered in buttons and switches. And, you know, we've talked about it over and over. We really like the dashboard and the layout on the F-150. Even the XLT, which is like a very stripped down model. Because there's a switch for everything you need to do, and it's easy to find, and you get like muscle memory for it, and so you don't have to take your eyes off the road. We vastly prefer that to the way the Tesla is laid out. So the comfort level, yeah, they're both comfortable. I mean, you know, we've done 1,000 miles in one day in this car. Have done 800 miles in a day in the Tesla, and they're both, you know, in terms of the seating position, in terms of the actual comfort of the seat, they're both great in that regard. I think you've got obviously a lot more headroom in the Ford. You know, the roof on this Tesla is very low. as you'd imagine it would be. But it is interesting, you know, because you can just tell there are parts of this car that Ford incorporated, you know, features from this car that Ford incorporated into the F-150. Specifically, the touchscreen, and specifically on the more expensive trim levels. You know, the Lariat, the Limited, the Platinum, King Ridge. It's got a full digital like dashboard there. It doesn't have an actual analog tachometer and speedometer, and we think that's kind of gimmicky and kind of dumb. We prefer the real one. But they're probably going to sell 1 million of these digital ones. Not much else to talk about. Again, it's a striking difference when you get into any other car after driving the F-150, especially the Tesla, because of just how different they are. But you do start to pick up on some of the similarities. And some of the ways that Ford, you know, which is always thinking about this, about some of the ways that Ford is trying to take the F-150 into the future. You know, that is their major moneymaker. That makes some gigantic share of their profits. And in the volumes they sell them, you know, they cannot afford to have the F-150 become an obsolete product because of either fuel economy regulations or, you know, EV mandates or what have you. And so you can tell they're working very, very hard to take the F-150 into the future and just kind of figure out how to make that happen and preserve its position in their lineup as their as like a money printing machine for them. I mean, it would be catastrophic to Ford if you know, if we woke up one day and it kind of went the way of the dodo bird, because oh well, you know, California has this rule they said they're going to make where 100% of the vehicles sold in their state by what, the year 2035 have to be full electric. That's just around the corner. That's like 15 years. That is not that far into the future as far as the auto industry is concerned, because of how long it takes to do the research and development and all the design, engineering work, all the supply chain work. You know, look how badly they've been crippled just by one component, the shortage of chips, microprocessors. There it goes. I mean, the automotive supply chain is like unimaginably complicated. You know, they're getting parts from all over the world, thousands and thousands of components. And if any one of them has a disruption, you know, like the Suez Canal gets blocked for a week, you know, that can throw the entire industry into turmoil. Or if, as we see, you know, somewhere in the Far East, in Taiwan or China or whatever, the supply of semiconductors gets disrupted. So Ford is working around the clock, and so is every other automaker, at least GM and Dodge or whatever the hell they're called now. They used to be the Chrysler Corporation, and then they went bankrupt, and then they were Chrysler LLC. I guess they were bought by private equity by like Cerberus, somebody like that. In like what, 06? And then before that they were Daimler Chrysler, and then, you know, they got through 1 million. They've been like bought and sold over and over again. When we were growing up, they were Chrysler Corporation, and then they almost died in like '78 or whatever, and you had Lee Iacocca, you know, saved them back in the early '80s, and then you had, and they did really well for a while. You know, they were coming out with some good products. They had this, we're not going to call the K car a good product, but it did save them. You know, they built like a million different variations of the K cars. And the minivans, I don't know if the minivans are based on the K cars. They had a lot of their parts though. The minivans that Chrysler invented. They invented a whole category. And then they had those the LH sedans in the 90s. Those big front-wheel drive sedans in the 90s. Those were very popular. Those did well. Yeah, they merged with Mercedes-Benz, Daimler Chrysler. That was a disaster. And then they got bought by Cerberus, and then they went bankrupt like 2-3 years later. And then they got bought by Fiat. At one point, the UAW was like the majority owner. It was kind of crazy. And then, and now they're owned by like, they've like merged with like Peugeot or somebody like that, and they got this new name that sounds like the kind of medicine you take when you're middle-aged and you have like heart problems. It's called like Stellaris or Stellantis. But they have not had a lot of money for product development. You know, for at least the last like decade, they've been kind of starved for funds for product development. And so, you know, it kind of shows. You know, they've taken the Hemi, and they've just been milking that engine for the last 15 plus years, and they haven't done a lot of. You know, and they got the Pentastar engine that's been on the market for about, I want to say 10 years. They're 3.6 liter V6. It's a great engine, but that thing has been on the market for about 10 years without a ton of improvements. And obviously the heavy duty pickups have the Cummins diesel, but Dodge or Ram as a truck brand, as a standalone brand, doesn't really do the R&D for that. Cummins does the R&D. You know, Ram says we want a 6.7 Cummins with 1,000 pound-feet of torque, and Cummins comes back and says, okay, here it is. You know, but Ford used to do the same thing. They used to buy the Super Duty engine from Navistar, and then there were a couple of disasters with like when they got rid of the 7.3 in like the year, what was that, 03 or 04, and replaced it with like a 6.0 and then a 6.4. And now the Super Duty engine, the Power Stroke, that is a Ford. That's like an in-house engine designed and built. And obviously the F-150's engines, the EcoBoost 3.5, the EcoBoost 2.7, the 5-liter Coyote V8, those are all developed in-house. And so Ford is putting massive amounts of capital into their engineering. And the EcoBoost to begin with was an engine, a product that Ford developed because they knew the days of the gas-guzzling V8 pickup truck were numbered. You know, they still make the 5.0 partly as like a almost to like make people feel better. You know, it's like, okay, you don't have to get the EcoBoost just yet. You can still get the 5.0 for a little while longer. But no, they kind of see the writing on the wall, and they know, you know, fuel economy regulations aren't going away, and emissions regulations are only going to get worse, especially for diesels. And so they're just trying to figure it out. And so the hybrid, which they just released this year, is like their next step in trying to tiptoe their way into the future. It's not a bad first effort. We've said it over and over again. The integration and the development and the refinement that it took to get all those parts to work together. You know, the 3.5 EcoBoost with a 10-speed automatic and then a 50 horsepower electric motor, like, grafted onto it, which can actually power the truck independently of the engine for a very short period. All that development and refinement work, I mean, it must have taken thousands of hours to get that all to work together smoothly. And the engine has like start, stop, and, you know, all that. It just works really well. It works exceptionally well. And if only they put a bigger battery into it, it would actually get you a noticeable and substantial improvement in the MPGs. Who knows? Maybe they're going to do that next year or the year after. You know, it's their first effort. All right, well, that's enough for now. Thanks a lot. I hope you all have a good Easter. And we will talk to you later.